Guilt does not scream. It sits quietly in the center of your chest. It follows you even when no one is watching. You can try to move on. You can change cities or jobs or friends. But guilt moves with you. Most people do not realize how heavy it has already become until they try to stand up straight and realize they cannot. You are carrying a silent passenger. It waits for the quiet moments to speak. It waits for the drive home or the minutes before sleep takes you. It whispers that you should have done more. It tells you that you should have known better. It replays the tape of your past mistakes, but it edits the footage to make every error unforgivable. This is not just sadness. This is a mechanism of control. You find yourself over-apologizing for taking up space. You hesitate to accept joy because deep down, you feel you have not earned it. You are punishing yourself in the hope that if you hurt enough, the past will change. But the past stays the same while you slowly disappear under the weight. We often confuse this heavy feeling with responsibility. We think that holding on to the pain proves we are good people. But there is a difference between learning a lesson and serving a life sentence. In the silence of this moment, you are finally going to put the bag down. We are going to examine what is inside. You are safe here. It is time to understand the invisible weight so you can finally let it go. The emotional alarm system. Guilt is often painted as the villain in the story of our lives. We treat it like a shadow we must outrun or a stain we must scrub away. But to understand the weight you are carrying, we must first understand why you picked it up. Biologically and psychologically, guilt was never designed to be a permanent resident in your mind. It was designed as a signal. Think of the fire alarm in a quiet hallway. When smoke rises, the alarm screams. It is jarring. It is unpleasant. It is impossible to ignore. This is by design. The noise is not there to punish the building. It is there to demand action. It says something is wrong. It says pay attention. It says move. In a healthy state, you hear the alarm, you put out the fire, and the alarm goes silent. This is healthy guilt. It is a functional compass. You make a mistake. You feel the sharp pang of regret. You apologize or you fix the error. The lesson is learned. The feeling fades. The internal architecture of your mind returns to silence. But for many of you listening to this, the silence never returned. You put out the fire years ago. The ashes have long since been swept away. You have apologized. You have suffered. You have tried to move on. Yet the alarm is still ringing. It may not be a scream anymore. It has become a low-grade hum, a static frequency in the back of your skull that never fully shuts off. This is where guilt transforms from a helpful signal into a toxic state of being. It stops being about what you did and starts becoming about who you are. The weight of this is invisible to everyone around you. They see you smiling at dinner. They see you going to work. They see you functioning, but they do not see the invisible backpack you strap on every morning. Let us look at what is inside that pack. First, there is the mental replay. This is the film reel that loops in your mind, usually when you are most vulnerable. It takes a moment from the past, a harsh word you spoke, a decision you hesitated on, a kindness you failed to offer, and it plays it in high definition. But it is not an accurate recording. Your mind edits the footage. It removes the context. It removes the stress you were under at the time. It removes your youth or your ignorance. It leaves only the bare fact of your mistake, illuminated under a harsh, unforgiving spotlight. You watch this reel, and you think that by analysing it one more time, you might fix it. You think that if you feel bad enough about it, the past will change. But the past is stubborn. It is set in stone. The only thing that changes is your ability to exist in the present. Then there is the physical toll. We call it a weight because that is exactly how the body interprets it. Guilt is heavy. It sits in the stomach like a stone that refuses to digest. It tightens the muscles in the shoulders and the neck. It changes your posture. You might find yourself walking with your head slightly down, eyes averting contact, making yourself smaller. This is a primal instinct, a biological response to feeling unworthy. You are unconsciously trying to hide from a judgment that is coming entirely from within. You lose the vital energy required for joy. Happiness requires a certain lightness. It requires the ability to float. But guilt is an anchor. When a moment of pure joy arrives, perhaps a laugh with a friend or a personal victory, the guilt is there to pull you back down. It whispers that you do not deserve this. It reminds you of the scorecard. It tells you that you have not suffered enough to earn this smile. So where does this come from? Why is your alarm broken? The sources are vast and often buried deep. Sometimes it is the obvious things. Major mistakes. Times you hurt someone you loved. Times you betrayed your own code of ethics. These are the sharpest stones in the pack, but often the guilt is nebulous. It comes from things left undone. The phone call you didn't make before it was too late. The career path you didn't take because you were afraid. The words you swallowed when you should have shouted. This is the guilt of potential, the guilt of the life you did not live. It also comes from expectations that were never yours to begin with. Many of us carry the luggage of our families. We carry the guilt of not being the doctor our parents wanted. We carry the guilt of leaving a hometown that was suffocating us. We carry the guilt of choosing ourselves when our culture taught us that self-sacrifice was the only virtue. There is also the guilt of survival. This is a heavy, complex burden. It appears when you succeed while those you love stay stagnant. It appears when you heal while your siblings are still broken. You feel like a traitor for outgrowing your environment. You feel guilty for the very strength that saved you. This internal state begins to dictate your external behaviour. It controls you in ways you might not even notice until they are pointed out. One of the most common symptoms is over-apologising. You apologise for taking up space. You apologise for asking a question. You apologise for things that are entirely out of your control, like the weather or the traffic. The word sorry becomes a shield. You use it to preemptively disarm anyone who might be mad at you. You are saying sorry, not because you have done wrong, but because you feel your very existence is an imposition on others. Then there is the self-sabotage. This is the most tragic mechanism of guilt. When you carry a deep, unresolved belief that you are bad or unworthy, your mind will reject good things. You land the perfect job, but you arrive late or miss deadlines until you lose it. You meet a partner who treats you with kindness and respect, but you pick fights or push them away until they leave. You do this because the chaos feels familiar. The punishment feels correct. Success and love feel alien to a mind that has convicted itself. You deny yourself rest. You might feel that you must be productive every single second of the day to justify your space on this earth. If you sit down to read a book or watch a movie, the anxiety rises. The inner critic asks what you have achieved today. It asks if you have done enough to pay the rent for your life. Relaxation feels like a crime. And then comes the night. The invisible weight is always heaviest at 3 a.m. During the day, you have distractions. You have work. You have noise. You have the performance of being okay. But at night, the world goes quiet. The sensory input fades. And in that vacuum, the thoughts you have been running from all day catch up to you. You stare at the ceiling. The shadows in the room seem to take the shape of your regrets. This is when the courtroom in your mind convenes. You are the defendant. You are the prosecutor. You are the judge. And unfortunately, you are also the executioner. You re-litigate cases from 10 years ago. You analyse the tone of voice you used in a conversation yesterday. You cringe at a memory from high school. The body is exhausted and begging for sleep, but the mind is running a marathon on a treadmill of shame. This nocturnal cycle is exhausting. It leaves you waking up tired, already defeated before your feet touch the floor. It creates a deficit of spirit. The tragedy is that most people believe this is necessary. This is the great lie of guilt. We are taught, implicitly or explicitly, that feeling bad is a virtue. We believe that if we punish ourselves enough, we will balance the scales. We think that suffering is a form of payment. If I hurt you, and then I hurt myself, we are even. But this is false math. Your suffering does not help the person you hurt. Your sleepless nights do not fix the past. Your anxiety does not create a time machine. All it does is rob the world of the person you could be today. It takes your energy, your creativity, and your love, and it burns them as an offering to a past that cannot receive them. You are confusing guilt with responsibility. They are not the same thing. Responsibility is active. It looks at the mess, picks up a broom, and cleans it. It makes amends where possible. It learns the lesson. It changes the behaviour. Responsibility is forward-moving. Guilt is passive. It sits in the mess and cries about how the mess exists. It stares at the broken glass and cuts itself on the shards. Guilt is stagnant. It keeps you stuck in the moment of the mistake, frozen in amber. To release this weight, you do not need to become a narcissist who cares about nothing. You do not need to forget what happened. You simply need to recognize that the alarm has done its job. The fire is out. The lesson is learned. The ringing is no longer protecting you. It is deafening you. You must begin the work of separating your actions from your identity. You are a human being who made a mistake. You are not the mistake itself. This requires a shift in how you speak to yourself. Imagine a child came to you, crying because they broke a vase. Would you scream at them every night for 10 years? Would you tell them they are worthless? Would you deny them food or sleep because of an accident? No. You would tell them to be careful. You would help them clean it up. You would tell them they are loved. Why is it that you cannot offer this same basic decency to yourself? Why is your own forgiveness the hardest currency to earn? The path to releasing this weight is not a sudden epiphany. It is a slow, deliberate practice of setting down the bags. It is catching yourself in the middle of the mental replay and pressing stop. It is feeling the urge to apologize for existing and choosing silence instead. It is allowing yourself to feel joy without looking over your shoulder for the punishment. It is understanding that you cannot hate yourself into a better version of yourself. You cannot shame yourself into growth. You have paid enough. The debt you think you owe has been paid in hours of anxiety and years of self-restriction. The books are balanced. It is time to close the ledger. As we move deeper into this topic, we will explore exactly how to silence the alarm. We will look at the practical steps of self-forgiveness. But for now, just sit with this truth. The weight you are carrying is not keeping you safe, and you are allowed to put it down. If this conversation resonates with the quiet battles you fight, and you want to continue this journey toward clarity and release, please consider subscribing. It helps us keep these late-night fires burning. The archive of regret. Deep within the landscape of your memory, there is a building that never closes. It has no windows, and the lights are always dim. This is where you keep the records of your life, but not the victories, not the moments of laughter, or the days where everything went right. This is a specific collection. This is the archive of regret. Most of us visit this place every single day. We do not go there because we want to. We go there because we feel we must. You might be driving to work or washing the dishes or staring at a blank screen, and suddenly you are pulled back. You are standing in front of a shelf in that dark room pulling down a specific memory. You see the moment perfectly. It is high definition. You see the face of the person you hurt. You hear the tone of your voice that was too sharp. You feel the heavy silence that followed your words. Or perhaps you see the opposite. You see the moment where you should have spoken but you stayed silent. You see the opportunity you let slip through your fingers because you were afraid. You play this scene over and over again. It is a loop. And every time you watch it, you feel a desperate desire to reach into the screen and change the ending. You want to grab your past self by the shoulders and shake them. You want to say stop. You want to say do not do this. But the ending never changes. The memory plays out exactly as it did 1 year ago or 10 years ago. And when the scene ends, you are left with the same residue. That heavy sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach. This is how guilt becomes an invisible weight. We tend to think of guilt as an emotion. We think of it as a fleeting feeling like sadness or anger. But guilt is different. Guilt is heavy. It has mass. It occupies space in your body. When you carry unresolved guilt, it is like carrying a backpack filled with stones. At first, the backpack is light. A small mistake happens and you feel a pebble of regret. You think you will just carry it for a moment. But then another mistake happens. Another expectation is not met. Another harsh word is spoken. You add another stone. Over the years, you do not empty the backpack. You only add to it. You become so used to the weight that you forget you are carrying it. You forget what it feels like to stand up straight. You forget what it feels like to breathe deeply without that tightness in your chest. This weight changes you physically. Observe your posture when you feel guilty. Your shoulders round forward. You look down more often. You try to take up less space. This is the body trying to protect itself. It is the physical manifestation of shame. You are trying to hide. This weight drains your energy. Think about how tired you feel even when you have not done physical labor. Maintaining the archive of regret takes enormous power. Your brain is constantly running these background programs. It is constantly analyzing the past and calculating your failures. This burns through your mental resources. You feel exhausted, not because you worked hard, but because you have been fighting a war inside your head all day. Let us look closer at what is on the shelves of this archive. What are the sources of this weight? Sometimes the guilt is obvious. You made a mistake. You betrayed a trust. You broke a promise. These are the loud guilts. They are clear and undeniable. But there are quieter forms of guilt that are just as heavy. There is the guilt of inaction, the things you did not do, the phone call you did not make before it was too late, the career you did not pursue because you were trying to be practical, the time you did not stand up for yourself. This guilt is slippery because it is not about what happened. It is about the ghosts of what could have happened. Then there is the guilt of expectation. This is the weight of other people's desires. Maybe your parents wanted you to be a doctor or a lawyer, and you chose to be an artist. Maybe your family expected you to follow a tradition that you walked away from. You feel guilty, not because you did something wrong, but because you disappointed someone else's image of you. You feel like you are wrong simply for being yourself. There is also the guilt of survival and success. This is a very deep and subtle weight. When you start to do well in life, sometimes a voice whispers that you do not deserve it. You look at friends or family members who are struggling. You see their pain and you feel guilty for your joy. You feel guilty for your health. You feel guilty for your stability. You begin to shrink yourself. You sabotage your own happiness because you feel that suffering is a form of solidarity. You think that if you stay miserable, you remain loyal to those who are suffering. This brings us to how guilt controls your behavior. It is a puppet master. It pulls the strings and you dance without realizing why. The most common behavior is over-apologizing. You say sorry for everything. You say sorry when someone bumps into you. You say sorry for asking a question. You say sorry for existing. You are constantly asking for permission to be here. This is the guilt talking. It is telling you that you are a burden. It is telling you that you are in debt to the world and you must pay with apologies. Another behavior is the inability to say no. When you are driven by guilt, you become a people pleaser. You agree to things you do not want to do. You give your time and energy to people who drain you. You do this because deep down, you feel you have to make up for something. You are trying to buy your redemption through service. You think that if you just do enough for everyone else, eventually you will balance the scales. Eventually you will be allowed to rest. But the scales never balance. There is always more to do. Guilt also creates a ceiling on your happiness. Imagine you are having a wonderful day. The sun is shining, you are laughing with friends, everything feels perfect. Suddenly a thought intrudes. You remember the archive. You remember the mistake you made 5 years ago. And instantly the joy evaporates. You stop laughing. You pull back. You feel that you are not allowed to be this happy. You feel that enjoying your life is a betrayal of your past mistakes. So you cap your joy. You stay in a safe zone of mild dissatisfaction because that feels appropriate for someone with your record. But the weight is heaviest at night. The day offers distractions. There is work. There is noise. There is the constant scroll of information on your phone. These things keep the door to the archive closed. But then the sun goes down. The world gets quiet. You turn off the lights and lay your head on the pillow. Now there is nowhere to hide. The silence of the night acts like a megaphone for guilt. The distractions are gone and the mind begins its patrol. It walks the hallways of the archive and starts pulling files. This is why you cannot sleep. It is not just insomnia, it is a trial. Every night you put yourself in the witness box. You act as the prosecutor and the judge. You review the evidence of your life. You ask yourself why you said that stupid thing. You ask yourself why you are not further ahead in life. You compare yourself to people who seem to have it all figured out. The logic of the night is cruel. It tells you that if you just think about it hard enough, you can fix it. It tells you that worry is a form of work. If you replay the memory one more time, maybe you will find the solution. But the past is a locked room. No amount of late-night thinking can open it. All it does is steal your rest. It leaves you hollowed out for the next day, making you more vulnerable to stress and more likely to make new mistakes. There is a fundamental misunderstanding that keeps us trapped in this cycle. We believe that feeling guilty makes us good people. We have been taught that guilt is the price of morality. We think that if we stop feeling bad about our mistakes, it means we are sociopaths. We think that letting go of the guilt means we are letting go of our conscience. We equate suffering with atonement. We think that as long as we are whipping ourselves, we are paying for our sins. So we hold onto the guilt tight. We clutch it to our chests like a treasure. We are afraid to put it down because we are terrified of who we would be without it. We think the guilt is the only thing keeping us in line. But look at the evidence. Does the guilt actually help you? Does feeling like garbage make you a better friend? Does replaying your failures make you a better partner? Does the exhaustion and the self-loathing make you more kind or more patient? Usually the answer is no. Toxic guilt makes you self-absorbed. When you are drowning in your own regret, you do not have the capacity to see others clearly. You are too busy looking inward at your own flaws to look outward with compassion. You are so focused on your past that you cannot be present for the people who need you right now. The guilt is not a moral compass. It is a cage. And the tragedy is that most of the doors in the archive of regret are not even locked. We are standing inside, holding the handle tight, refusing to turn it. We are waiting for someone to come and give us permission to leave. We are waiting for a letter from the universe or a phone call from the past telling us that we are forgiven. We wait for years. We wait for decades. But the call never comes. The person we hurt may have moved on long ago. They may have forgotten the incident entirely. Or they may not be here anymore. The expectations we failed to meet may have been illusions to begin with. The person keeping you in the archive is you. You are the architect of this building. You are the librarian organizing the shelves. And you are the only one who can sign the release form. This does not mean we ignore our mistakes. There is a difference between remorse and toxic guilt. Remorse is a sharp, clean pain. It says I did something wrong and I need to repair it. It leads to action. You apologize, you fix the damage, you learn the lesson. And then the emotion passes. It has done its job. It was an alarm clock, and once you wake up, you turn it off. Toxic guilt is the alarm clock that never stops ringing. It rings long after you have woken up. It rings long after you have apologized. It rings when there is nothing left to do. It becomes a background static that distorts your entire reality. To begin the process of release, you must first recognize the weight. You must acknowledge that you are tired. You must admit that this strategy of self-punishment is not working. It has not made you perfect. It has only made you heavy. You need to see the archive for what it is. It is not a record of truth. It is a record of your worst fears and your harshest judgments. It is a biased history written by a critic who hates you. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to walk out of that building. Imagine stepping out of the dark, windowless room and into the sunlight. Imagine taking off the backpack of stones. How would your body feel? Lighter? Taller? How would your mind feel? Quiet? Clear? How would you treat the people around you if you were not constantly defending yourself against your own shadow? You would be free to make new mistakes. And you will make them. but you would handle them differently. You would not store them in the dark. You would look at them, learn from them, and let them go. Moving from the archive of regret to the open air is not easy. It requires a radical act. It requires you to forgive yourself, not because you are perfect, but because you are human, and because you cannot fix the world while you are busy destroying yourself. The past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. You have lived there long enough. It is time to pack up. It is time to turn off the lights in that room and walk away. The door is open. The weight can be dropped. But you have to decide that you are done carrying it. The slow accumulation. It does not happen all at once. That is the trick. If the full weight of guilt fell upon you in a single moment, you would collapse. You would recognize it immediately as a foreign object, something heavy and crushing that does not belong to you. You would fight it. You would throw it off because the contrast between your normal lightness and this sudden burden would be too great to ignore. But guilt does not work that way. It is far more subtle. It is a slow accumulation. It is the dust that settles on furniture in a room no one visits. Day by day, the layer grows thicker, turning the vibrant colours of your life into shades of grey. You do not notice the change from one hour to the next. You simply wake up one morning and realise that the air feels heavier. You realise that moving your limbs requires more effort than it used to. We are speaking now about the invisible mechanics of this burden. We have looked at the archives of regret, those specific memories you keep stored away. Now we must look at what happens when those files are left open, when the archive leaks into the living room of your mind. This accumulation begins with the mental replay. This is the engine of guilt. Something happened. Perhaps you spoke a harsh word to someone you loved. Perhaps you stayed silent when you should have defended a friend. Perhaps you made a choice that altered the course of your career or your family life, and the outcome was not what you hoped. The event is over. In the physical world, the sound waves of those words have dissipated. The moment has passed into history, but in your mind, it is happening right now. You replay the scene. You watch it like a film that never reaches the credits. You scrutinize your own face, your own tone. You rewrite the script. You imagine what you could have said. You imagine a different ending where you were kinder, smarter, or braver. But then the replay ends and you are snapped back into the reality where the mistake is permanent. This gap between what happened and what you wish happened creates a specific kind of friction. That friction produces heat, and that heat hardens into guilt. Each time you replay the memory, you add another layer of weight. You are teaching your brain that this past event is a present danger. You are keeping the wound fresh. You are picking at the scab not because you want to bleed, but because you are afraid that if it heals, you will forget the lesson. You believe somewhere deep in your subconscious that suffering is the price of redemption. This is where the accumulation becomes dangerous. We often confuse feeling bad with doing good. We think that if we punish ourselves enough through these mental replays, we are somehow balancing the scales of the universe. We think that our guilt is a form of payment. If I feel terrible for 10 years, maybe that makes up for the 5 minutes of poor judgment. So you carry it. You tuck the memory into your pocket. You walk around with it. At first, it just affects your mood. You feel a little more irritable, a little less patient. The joy of a sunny afternoon is dimmed because there is a voice in the back of your head whispering that you do not deserve this sunlight. Not after what you did. Not after who you failed to be. Then, the accumulation moves from your mood to your behaviour. This is when the weight becomes visible to others, even if they do not understand what they are seeing. You start to apologise for things that are not your fault. You bump into a table, and you say sorry to the table. Someone else makes a mistake, and you take the blame because you are so used to feeling guilty that it feels natural to assume you are the problem. You become smaller. You take up less space in the room. You sit with your shoulders hunched forward, protecting the chest, protecting the heart, physically curling around the weight you are carrying. You begin to sabotage your own happiness. This is one of the most tragic aspects of the slow accumulation. When a moment of genuine joy arrives, a promotion at work, a new relationship, A burst of laughter with friends. Your internal alarm goes off. The guilt steps in like a stern warden. It reminds you that you are under house arrest. It tells you that you have not finished your sentence yet. So you pull back. You say the wrong thing to ruin the moment. You decline the invitation. You convince yourself that you prefer to be alone, when in reality, you are just obeying the rules of your guilt. You deny yourself pleasure because pleasure feels like a betrayal of the past. Consider the things that cause this. It is not always a great crime. Often, the heaviest guilt comes from the quietest sources. It is the guilt of words not said. The phone call you meant to make to a relative who is now gone. You carry the silence of that unmade call like a stone. You tell yourself that you were too busy, but the guilt tells you that you were selfish. It is the guilt of survival. This is a heavy one. When you move past a struggle that consumed others, or when you succeed where your family struggled, you feel a strange pang. Why me? Why did I get out? You feel guilty for your own health. You feel guilty for your own stability. You start to undermine your success because it feels unfair to those you left behind, even if those people would want you to soar. It is the guilt of self-betrayal. This is the weight of all the times you said yes when you wanted to say no. The times you let someone cross your boundaries because you wanted to be liked. The times you silenced your own intuition to please a partner or a parent. This guilt is tricky because it masquerades as resentment toward others. But deep down, it is anger at yourself for not protecting your own peace. As these layers pile up, they change your fundamental vibration. You stop being the protagonist of your own life and start becoming the apology for it. And then comes the night. The accumulation is always heaviest at night. During the day, you have distractions. You have work. You have noise. You have the constant stream of information that keeps the mind busy. You can outrun the shadow while the sun is up. But when the lights go out, the distractions vanish. The silence of the bedroom acts like a vacuum. It sucks away the noise of the present and leaves only the echo of the past. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, and the archive opens wide. This is when the weight presses down on your chest. It is a physical sensation. It can feel like shortness of breath. It can feel like a dull ache in the stomach. It is the body manifesting the mind's refusal to let go. In the dark, the logic of the day dissolves. A small mistake from 5 years ago expands until it fills the room. You analyze conversations that happened a decade ago. You worry about the future because you are judging your capability based on your past failures. You tell yourself that because you failed once, you will fail again. The guilt morphs into anxiety. It tells you that you are not safe because you cannot trust yourself. This insomnia is not a sleep disorder. It is a guilt disorder. It is the mind trying to solve a problem that cannot be solved by thinking. You cannot think your way out of the past. You cannot analyze your way to forgiveness. But the mind tries anyway, spinning the wheels, burning energy, grinding deeper into the rut. This is how the weight becomes invisible. You learn to function on very little sleep. You learn to smile while your stomach is in knots. You learn to listen to people while a parallel track of self-criticism runs in your brain. You become a high-functioning vessel for guilt. People might look at you and see someone responsible, someone reliable, someone who cares deeply. They do not see that your reliability is driven by a fear of disappointing anyone ever again. They do not see that your care is actually a form of penance. You overgive because you feel you are in debt. You overwork because you are trying to outrun the feeling of inadequacy. This is the slow accumulation. It is the transformation of a human being into a beast of burden. It affects your relationships. You might keep people at a distance because you are afraid that if they get too close, they will see the things you are ashamed of. Or perhaps you cling too tightly, needing constant reassurance that you are still good, still worthy, still lovable. You ask for validation not because you are vain, but because you are trying to silence the prosecutor in your head. You might find yourself staying in situations you have outgrown. A job that drains you, a friendship that is one-sided, a relationship that has turned cold. You stay because you feel you do not deserve better. You stay because guilt tells you that this is what you have earned. You confuse endurance with virtue. You think that by suffering through a bad situation, you are proving your strength, but you are only proving your tolerance for pain. This weight affects your physical body in ways that science is only beginning to understand. The constant bath of stress hormones, the tension held in the jaw and the neck, the shallow breathing that signals to your nervous system that you are under threat. Guilt is not just a thought, it is a biological state. It ages you. It steals your vitality. It takes the energy that should be used for creation and uses it for maintenance. You are using all your fuel just to hold the weight up, leaving nothing left to move forward. We must also speak of the cultural layers of this accumulation. We are often raised in environments that weaponize guilt. We are taught that guilt is a sign of a good conscience. We are told that if we do not feel bad, we are sociopaths. We inherit the guilt of our parents. We carry the expectations of our community. We feel guilty for resting. We feel guilty for saying no. We feel guilty for having more than our neighbours. This cultural guilt mixes with your personal guilt to form a concrete casing around your soul. You forget what it feels like to be light. You forget what it feels like to act from a place of desire rather than obligation. Imagine for a moment what this accumulation looks like. Imagine yourself walking up a mountain. When you started your life, you had a backpack. It was empty. You were light. You were curious. Then, the first mistake happened. You picked up a stone and put it in the bag. You thought, I will carry this until I make it right. But you never took it out. Then came the first heartbreak, the first failure, the first moment of shame. More stones. Over the years, you have become a collector of stones. You have picked up rocks that belong to other people and put them in your bag. You have picked up pebbles of minor embarrassments. You have picked up boulders of major regrets. Now you are halfway up the mountain. You are exhausted. You are sweating. Your back is bent. You look at others who seem to be running up the trail, and you wonder what is wrong with you. You wonder why you are so weak. But you are not weak. You are carrying 300 pounds of rocks. The fact that you are moving at all is a testament to your incredible strength. The fact that you get out of bed, that you go to work, that you try to be kind, despite this invisible crushing load, proves how resilient you actually are. The problem is not your strength. The problem is the load. And the tragedy is that you think the load is glued to you. You think it is part of your skin. You think that to put down the bag would be to lose yourself. You have identified with the burden for so long that you do not know who you would be without it. You fear that without the guilt, you would become careless. You fear that without the remorse, you would become a monster. You believe the weight is what keeps you moral. But this is the great lie of the slow accumulation. Guilt is not a moral compass. Guilt is a stagnant pond. It does not lead you toward better action. It keeps you circling the drain of the past. A moral compass points north. It points toward the future. It points toward correction, toward growth, toward change. Guilt points backward. It points toward what is dead and gone. You are tired. I know you are tired. You have been carrying this for a very long time. You have been respectful of your mistakes. You have paid your tribute to the past. But the accumulation has reached a critical mass. There is no more room in the bag. The seams are tearing. The straps are cutting into your shoulders. You are standing at a precipice. You can continue to climb with this weight, moving slower and slower, until you stop completely. Or you can begin the process of unpacking. This does not mean forgetting. We are not talking about amnesia. We are talking about assessment. We are talking about looking at each stone and asking a simple question. Does this serve a purpose? Does this sadness help anyone? Does this self-punishment make the world a better place? If the answer is no, then the weight is useless. It is just gravity without purpose. The slow accumulation has happened over thousands of days. It will not disappear in a single second, but the realization that you are carrying it is the first step in setting it down. You must see the weight for what it is. It is not you. It is what you are carrying. The silence of the night does not have to be a courtroom. The replay in your mind does not have to be a torture chamber. You can stop the film. You can step out of the theatre. You can walk out into the fresh air of the present moment. The air is lighter there. The gravity is normal there. You have punished yourself enough. The sentence has been served. The accumulation can stop here. Let us now look at how to open the bag. Let us look at how to take the stones out, one by one, and leave them on the side of the trail, where they belong. Not as trash, but as markers of where you have been, so you no longer have to carry them to where you are going. The puppeteer of behaviour. You have likely noticed that the weight in your chest does not stay contained within your rib cage. If guilt was simply a feeling, it would be uncomfortable but manageable. You could compartmentalize it. You could set it aside to focus on your work or your relationships. But guilt is not just a passive passenger. It is an architect. It reshapes the structure of your daily life. It quietly takes hold of the steering wheel. We have arrived at the phase where we must examine guilt as the puppeteer of behaviour. This is often the hardest part to admit because it requires us to look at our actions and realise they are not entirely our own. When guilt remains unprocessed, it begins to make decisions for you. It dictates where you go and who you speak to. It decides how loud you laugh and how much space you allow yourself to take up in a room. You might believe you are making these choices freely, but if you look closer, you will see the invisible strings attached to your wrists and ankles. Consider the way you speak. For many who carry this invisible weight, language becomes a minefield. You might find yourself over-apologising. This is not the polite apology of bumping into someone in a crowded hallway. This is a reflexive, defensive apology. You apologise for speaking. You apologise for asking a question. You apologise for existing in a way that might inconvenience someone else even slightly. This happens because deep down, the guilt has convinced you that you are already in debt. You feel that you are operating at a deficit. Therefore, any request you make or any space you occupy feels like you are taking something you have not paid for. You say, sorry, to preemptively strike against the judgment you believe is coming. You are trying to smooth over ripples that you haven't even caused yet. This behaviour is exhausted submission. It is the posture of someone who believes they are on trial. You walk through your life waiting for a verdict that was seemingly delivered years ago. But the puppeteer controls more than just your words. It controls your capacity for joy. This is perhaps the most tragic mechanism of guilt. Imagine a moment where everything is going well. You are having dinner with friends or you have achieved a milestone at work. The sun is shining and for a brief second you feel light. You feel happy. Immediately the alarm triggers. The guilt in your system recognises happiness as a threat. It views joy as something unauthorised. You suddenly feel a spike of anxiety. You wonder if you have forgotten something important. You wonder if you deserve to be smiling when you have made so many mistakes in the past. The puppeteer pulls the string and you shut down. You withdraw from the conversation. You sabotage the mood. You find a reason to be sad or worried because sadness feels safer. Sadness feels like the appropriate payment for your past crimes. Happiness feels like theft. This creates a cycle where you essentially put a ceiling on your own potential. You only allow yourself to rise so high before the guilt drags you back down to the baseline of discomfort. You might turn down opportunities because you feel like a fraud. This is the imposter syndrome fed by the archives of regret we spoke of earlier. You think that if people knew who you really were or what you have done, they would not offer you this love or this promotion. So you reject it before they can take it away. You fire yourself before you can be hired. You break the relationship before you can be left. It is a twisted form of protection. The guilt convinces you that if you punish yourself first, nobody else can hurt you. If you keep yourself small, nobody can target you. If you deny yourself happiness, you will never have to face the pain of losing it. This invisible weight also impacts your posture and your physical presence. We often think of guilt as mental, but it is deeply somatic. It lives in the body. Watch how you sit. Watch how you walk. Guilt collapses the chest. It rolls the shoulders forward. It lowers the chin. It is the physical manifestation of hiding. You are trying to present the smallest possible target to the world. You avoid eye contact, not because you are deceitful, but because you are afraid of being seen. You fear that if someone looks into your eyes long enough, they will see the things you are ashamed of. They will read the archive of regret. So you look away. You look down. You make yourself invisible. The puppeteer is also responsible for the exhaustion you feel. We often mistake this fatigue for lack of sleep or physical exertion. But consider the energy required to constantly monitor your own behaviour. You are essentially running a courtroom in the back of your mind 24 hours a day. You are the defendant and the prosecutor and the judge. Every action you take is being scrutinised. Did I say too much? Was I too loud? Did I offend them? Did I sound selfish? This constant internal review burns an immense amount of glucose. It drains your nervous system. By the time you reach the afternoon, you are depleted, not because of what you did physically, but because of the marathon you ran mentally to justify your own existence. We must also look at how guilt keeps you stagnant. It binds you to situations you have outgrown. This is common in relationships and careers. You might stay in a dynamic that is harmful or simply finished because leaving triggers a massive wave of guilt. You feel responsible for the other person's emotions. You feel that their happiness is your burden to carry. The guilt whispers that if you choose yourself, you are being selfish. It tells you that a good person sacrifices. It tells you that enduring discomfort is a form of nobility. So you stay. You let the puppeteer nail your feet to the floor. You waste years of your life trying to pay back a debt that cannot be calculated. You confuse martyrdom with morality. You believe that by suffering you are proving your goodness. But suffering is not a currency. Being miserable does not buy you redemption. It just wastes your time. This leads us to the darker side of the puppeteer, which is self-sabotage. Sometimes the guilt is so loud that we feel the need to manifest a punishment in the real world. We feel so bad on the inside that we create chaos on the outside to match it. You might pick a fight with a partner when things are calm. You might procrastinate on a project until it fails. You might neglect your health. This is not laziness, and it is not incompetence. It is an unconscious attempt to align your reality with your internal narrative. Your mind says, I am bad, and therefore I should have a bad life. When your life is going well, the dissonance is too painful. So the puppeteer forces you to break something just to restore the familiar order of chaos. It is heartbreaking to realize how much of our lives has been shaped by this need for penance. We treat ourselves with a harshness we would never apply to a friend or even a stranger. If you saw a child drop a glass and break it, you would tell them to be careful and help them clean it up. You would not tell them they are unworthy of love. You would not tell them they should never drink water again. But when you make a mistake, the voice in your head does exactly that. It says you are flawed. It says you have ruined everything. It says you do not deserve to try again. The puppeteer is strict. It demands perfection, but it ensures failure. It sets the bar so high that you cannot possibly reach it, and then it beats you when you fall. This is the cycle that controls your behaviour. It turns you into a person you do not want to be. You become anxious. You become withdrawn. You become defensive. You lose your spontaneity because spontaneity is dangerous. Every move must be calculated to minimize guilt. You may also find that guilt affects your memory. It edits the footage of your life. When you look back at the past, the guilt highlights every error and deletes every triumph. You could have a year filled with kindness and success, but if you made one significant mistake, the guilt will make that mistake the cover image of that entire year. It colours your history in shades of grey. This affects your confidence in the present because you do not trust your own track record. You view yourself as a collection of errors rather than a human being learning to navigate a complex world. This distortion creates a barrier between you and the people who love you. They see you as you are. They see your kindness and your effort. But you cannot receive their love because the guilt acts as a filter. When they give you a compliment, the puppeteer intercepts it. It tells you they are just being nice. It tells you they don't know the real you. It tells you that if they knew the truth, they would leave. This creates a profound loneliness. You can be in a room full of people who adore you and still feel completely isolated because you are trapped inside a fortress of your own judgment. The behavior of overgiving is another string the puppeteer pulls. You might find yourself exhausted from doing things for others. You say yes when you want to say no. You overextend your finances or your time to help people who have not asked for it. On the surface, this looks like generosity. It looks like kindness, but if you look deeper, you might find the transaction. You are trying to buy your way out of guilt. You are trying to pile up enough good deeds to tip the scales back in your favor. But because the guilt is internal, no amount of external action can ever satisfy it. It is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You pour, and you are always empty. Recognizing these behaviors is painful. It is uncomfortable to admit that we have been acting out of fear rather than love. It is hard to see how many choices were made to appease a ghost from the past. But this recognition is the first step in cutting the strings. You have to see the puppeteer before you can stop the show. You are not doing these things because you are broken. You are doing them because you are trying to survive. You are trying to manage a heavy load that no one else can see. The over-apologizing and the self-sabotage and the withdrawal are all coping mechanisms. They are your mind's misguided attempt to keep you safe and to keep you moral. Your mind thinks that if it keeps you guilty, it keeps you good. It fears that without the guilt, you would lose your compass. But this is a lie. You do not need guilt to be a good person. You do not need to feel bad to act right. Empathy and wisdom guide you far better than shame ever could. The puppeteer is not protecting you. It is slowly erasing you. As we move deeper into this understanding, we must prepare to face the quietest hours. The behaviours we have discussed often play out during the day in the bustle of work and social interaction. But the source of the guilt grows loudest when the movement stops. When the sun goes down and the distractions fade, the puppeteer stops pulling the strings of action and starts pulling the strings of memory. We need to understand that your behaviour is not a character flaw. It is a symptom. The stiffness in your shoulders and the hesitation in your voice are evidence of the weight you are carrying. You have been walking uphill for a very long time. It is natural that you are tired. It is natural that you have developed a limp. The goal now is not to force yourself to change these behaviours through willpower alone. You cannot simply command yourself to stop feeling guilty. That is just another form of aggression against yourself. Instead, we must look at the source. We must understand why the debt feels so unpaid. We must look at the difference between taking responsibility and inflicting punishment. Responsibility is a clean weight. It is something you can pick up, carry to the destination and set down. Punishment is a toxic weight. It binds to your skin and poisons your blood. The behaviours we have described, the shrinking, the apologising, the sabotage, are the result of choosing punishment over responsibility. You have spent enough time in the courtroom. You have heard the prosecution's case 1,000 times. You have lived the sentence. The puppeteer has had its turn. It is time to wonder what it would feel like to move your own hands again, to speak with your own voice, to walk into a room and not apologise for the space you displace. This begins by noticing the string when it is pulled. Tomorrow, when you start to say sorry for something that is not your fault, stop. Catch the breath in your throat. When you feel the urge to ruin a good moment, breathe through the anxiety. Recognize that the anxiety is just the old guard trying to protect the prison. You do not have to listen. The invisible weight has changed how you move, but it has not broken your bones. You can learn to walk upright again. You can learn to trust that you are not one mistake away from ruin. The journey from being controlled by guilt to being guided by wisdom is slow, but it is the only path that leads to rest. And rest is what you need more than anything. Not just sleep, but the deep rest of a soul that has finally stopped running from itself. The 3 a.m. courtroom. The day is a master of distraction. Sunlight has a way of bleaching out the shadows of the mind. When the sun is up, you have tasks, you have noise, you have the constant friction of living to keep you occupied. There are emails to answer, traffic to navigate, and conversations that demand your immediate attention. In the daylight, guilt is easily shoved into the background. It becomes white noise, a low hum that you can ignore if you turn the radio up loud enough. But then the sun goes down. The world slows. The traffic fades. The notifications stop pinging. You turn off the lights and lay your head on the pillow. You close your eyes, expecting rest. You are tired. Your body is heavy. You are ready for sleep. And that is when the gavel strikes. Welcome to the 3 a.m. courtroom. This is a place that exists outside of normal time. It is a private tribunal held in the silence of your own skull. In this courtroom, there are no spectators. There are only 3 people present, and you are all of them. You are the defendant standing accused in the dock. You are the prosecutor, relentless and cruel, armed with a perfect record of every mistake you have ever made. And you are the judge, sitting high above, ready to pass a sentence that never seems to end. The session usually begins with a small memory. It might be something trivial, a clumsy sentence you spoke 3 years ago, a joke that didn't land, a moment of hesitation when you should have been bold. It starts small, just a flicker of embarrassment. But in the vacuum of the night, without the noise of the day to buffer it, that small memory expands. It fills the room. The prosecutor in your mind steps forward. It does not care that you are tired. It does not care that this happened a decade ago. It presents the evidence with high-definition clarity. You see the look on the other person's face. You hear the tone of your voice. You feel the heat rising in your cheeks all over again, just as hot as it was the moment it happened. The logic of the 3 a.m. courtroom is flawed, but it feels incredibly real. The flaw is that you are judging your past self with your present wisdom. This is the oldest trick of guilt. It demands that the version of you who existed 5 years ago should have known what the version of you today knows now. It is a rigged trial. You cannot possibly win because you are trying to apply the lessons of the aftermath to the moment before the disaster. You toss, you turn, you flip the pillow to the cool side, hoping it will cool your thoughts. It does not work. The case escalates. The prosecutor moves from the trivial to the significant. Now we are not talking about awkward comments. Now we are looking at the real hurts, the relationship you damaged, the opportunity you wasted, the silence you kept when you should have defended someone, the anger you unleashed on someone who didn't deserve it. This is where the weight becomes physical. Guilt at 3 a.m. is not just a thought. It is a pressure in the chest. It is a tightening of the throat. It is a chemical bath of cortisol and adrenaline that tells your heart to race when it should be slowing down. Your body reacts as if the threat is in the room with you. But the threat is you. The prosecution is ruthless. It edits the footage. It removes the context. It cuts out the fact that you were stressed, or young, or grieving, or confused. It isolates the mistake and shines a spotlight on it until it is the only thing you can see. It whispers a singular, devastating lie. It says that this mistake is not just something you did, but something you are. This is the critical shift. This is where healthy guilt turns into toxic shame. Healthy guilt says I did something bad. Toxic shame says I am bad. In the 3 a.m. courtroom, the verdict is almost always the latter. You try to defend yourself. You whisper into the dark. You tell yourself that you have changed. You tell yourself that you have apologized. You tell yourself that everyone makes mistakes. But the judge in your mind is not interested in mercy. The judge is interested in penance. And so the sentencing begins. The sentence is not prison. The sentence is the loop. You are condemned to replay the event. Again. And again and again. The mind has a strange superstition. It believes that if you think about the past hard enough, if you analyze it from every possible angle, if you simmer in the regret long enough, you might somehow change the outcome. It is a magical type of thinking. We believe that our suffering is a form of payment. We think that if we feel bad enough for long enough, the universe will accept our misery as a trade for the mistake. But the past is a stubborn thing. It is carved in stone. No amount of lost sleep will soften it. No amount of self-hatred will edit the script. The 3 a.m. courtroom cannot grant you a retrial in reality. It can only hold you hostage in fantasy. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why does the brain choose the quietest hour to make the loudest noise? Part of it is biology. When the distractions fade, the brain searches for problems to solve. It is a survival mechanism. It looks for threats. In the modern world, we have very few tigers stalking us in the night. So the brain turns inward. It identifies social threats. It identifies moral failures. It flags them as dangerous. It wakes you up to say, look at this danger. Look at how you failed. You must fix this so you do not die of social isolation. It is a primitive alarm system misfiring in a modern life. It treats a regret like a predator. It demands you stay awake to fight it. But you cannot fight a ghost. The heaviness you feel is the accumulation of these nightly trials. Night after night, you revisit the archives. You pull out the files of your failures. You blow the dust off them. You read every line. And every time you do, you reinforce the neural pathways that say you are not enough. You are deepening the groove of guilt in your mind. The tragedy of the 3 a.m. courtroom is that it provides no resolution. A real court has a verdict, a sentence, and then a release. Once you serve your time, you are free. But in the court of the mind, the sentence is indefinite. You can serve time for the same crime every night for 20 years. There is no parole board. There is no judge to bang the gavel and say you have suffered enough, because you are the judge, and you have forgotten how to show mercy. This courtroom thrives on isolation. It convinces you that you are the only one awake. It tells you that everyone else is sleeping the sleep of the innocent. It tells you that everyone else has their life together, that they do not stare at the ceiling fan wondering if they are a bad person. This is another lie. If you could see through the roofs of the houses around you, you would see thousands of people staring into the dark. You would see a vast, silent community of the guilty. Parents wondering if they damaged their children. Children wondering if they neglected their parents. Lovers wondering if they chose the wrong path. Friends wondering if they said the wrong thing. You are not alone in the courtroom. You are just the only one in your specific chamber. The experience of late-night regret is one of the most universal human experiences. It is the price of having a conscience. It is the burden of having a memory. But knowing this does not make the pillow softer. It does not slow the racing heart. To leave the courtroom, you have to do something radical. You have to challenge the authority of the court itself. You have to realize that the trial is a sham. The purpose of guilt is to teach, not to torture. Once the lesson is learned, the guilt has finished its job. If you know what you did was wrong, and you know why it was wrong, and you have resolved not to do it again, the utility of the guilt is at zero. Anything beyond that point is not moral growth. It is just self-destruction. When the prosecutor stands up at 3 a.m. and points a finger at you, you do not have to argue back. You do not have to justify. You do not have to plead. You can simply agree with the facts, but reject the sentence. You can say to the dark, yes, I did that. That happened. It was ugly. It was a mistake. And then you must follow it with the truth that the court tries to hide. You can say, and I am also the person who learned from it. I am the person who is trying to be better. I am the person who is suffering right now because I care about being good. Bad people do not lie awake at night worrying about being bad. Truly malicious people sleep soundly. The very fact that you are holding this trial proves that you have a conscience. The guilt is proof of your goodness, not your evil. It is proof that you have standards that you want to meet. The courtroom wants you to believe that your mistake is the whole story. It wants to define you by your worst day. But a life is not a single day. A life is a long, complex tapestry. There are threads of gold and threads of black. The 3 a.m. mind zooms in on the black thread until it fills the entire field of vision. It is your job, when the sun comes up, to zoom out, to see the pattern, to see that the black thread is part of the design, but it is not the canvas itself. As the night wears on, the exhaustion sets in deeper. The mental defense weakens. This is often when the tears come. Not the loud sobbing of grief, but the quiet, leaking tears of helplessness. You just want it to stop. You just want to sleep. It is important to understand that you cannot force the court to close. You cannot scream it into silence. Fighting the thoughts usually feeds them. It gives them energy. Instead, you must treat these intrusive thoughts like a storm passing outside the window. You hear the thunder. You see the rain. But you do not have to go outside and stand in it. You can observe the guilt without accepting its conclusion. You can watch the memory play out on the screen of your mind and say, I see you, I remember you. But I am not going to litigate this tonight. This requires a gentle firmness. It is the way a parent speaks to a frightened, irrational child. You do not scream at the child. You do not lock the child in the basement. You speak softly. You say, I know you are scared. I know you are upset. But it is time to rest now. We can look at this in the morning light, because the morning light changes everything. When the sun rises, the chemistry of the brain shifts, the cortisol drops, the shadows retreat. The problem that seemed insurmountable at 3 a.m. often looks manageable at 7 a.m. The text message that seemed like a declaration of war looks like a simple misunderstanding. The mistake that felt like a life sentence feels like a lesson. The courtroom is a creature of the dark. It cannot survive the dawn, so when you find yourself in the dock, staring down the prosecutor of your past, remember that this is a biological trick. It is a hallucination of emotions. You are safe in your bed. The past is dead and buried, and no amount of worry will resurrect it. The only thing you can control is the breathing of your chest right now. Slow the breath. Unclench the jaw. Drop the shoulders away from the ears. Tell the judge that court is adjourned, not because you are innocent, but because you are human. And humans are allowed to sleep. Humans are allowed to heal. Humans are allowed to be imperfect works in progress. The gavel does not have to come down. You can simply walk out of the room. The door is not locked. It never was. You were just staring so hard at the floor that you forgot to look for the exit. Rest now. The trial is over. The lesson is learned. The punishment is unnecessary. Let the silence just be silence. Let the dark just be the dark. You have served your time. The myth of suffering as payment. You have reached the deepest part of the maze. We have walked through the initial shock of the alarm. We have dusted off the archives of regret. We have watched how the weight accumulates over time and how it pulls the strings of your daily behaviour. We have even stood trial in the courtroom of your mind at 3 a.m. But now we arrive at the most dangerous illusion of all. This is the mechanism that keeps the cycle spinning. It is the reason you cannot let go. It is the belief that keeps you locked in a cell where you hold the only key. We call this the myth of suffering as payment. There is a primitive logic deeply wired into the human brain. It is transactional. It understands trade. If you want an apple, you give a coin. If you want safety, you build a shelter. If you break something, you pay for it. This logic works perfectly well in the physical world. It keeps societies functioning. It ensures fairness. The problem arises when we apply this economic logic to our internal emotional world. When you make a mistake, or when you hurt someone, or when you fail to live up to your own standards, you feel a debt has been created. You look at the ledger of your life and you see a deficit. You see a red line where there should be black ink. Your instinct tells you that this debt must be paid. But here is the tragedy. You cannot pay for the past with money. You cannot pay for it with time travel because the past is sealed. You cannot physically undo what has been done. So you look around for a currency. You search your pockets for something of value that you can offer to balance the scales. And the only thing you find is your own happiness. You decide consciously or unconsciously that pain is the currency of morality. You begin to believe that if you suffer enough, you will eventually purchase your innocence. You tell yourself that feeling bad is the noble thing to do. You convince yourself that misery is proof of your goodness. If you were a bad person, you would not care. You would be out dancing and laughing. You would be sleeping soundly, but you are a good person. So you stay awake. You refuse to smile. You sabotage your own joy. You offer up your suffering as a sacrifice to the universe of cause and effect. You are trying to pay a debt that cannot be paid with a currency that has no value. Let us look closely at this transaction. Let us examine it with the cold light of reality. Imagine you hurt a friend years ago. You said something cruel. You betrayed a trust. The friendship ended and the guilt set in. Now imagine that for the last 5 years you have denied yourself happiness. You have turned down promotions because you did not feel worthy. You have pushed away new love because you do not trust yourself. You have spent thousands of hours replaying the moment of betrayal in your mind and berating yourself with harsh words. You have suffered. There is no doubt about that. You have paid a heavy price. But ask yourself this: has your suffering helped the friend you hurt? Has your insomnia made their sleep any more peaceful? Has your self-hatred repaired their trust? Has your stagnation improved their life in any measurable way? The answer is no. Your suffering is happening in a vacuum. It is a closed loop. You are burning down your own house to keep warm, but the heat does not reach anyone else. This is the hard truth that guilt tries to hide from you. Your pain does not fix the past. Your misery is not a service to the world. It is simply a waste of life. This realization is terrifying. If suffering does not pay the debt, then what does? If feeling bad does not make you a good person, then what are you? This is why the myth is so seductive. It gives you something to do. It gives you a sense of agency. Even if that agency is destructive, it feels better than helplessness. It feels like work. You feel like you are clocking in for a shift at the factory of regret. You are putting in the hours. You are doing the labor of penance. It feels like justice, but it is not justice. It is stagnation. True responsibility is active. True accountability is about change. It is about making amends where possible and becoming a better human where amends are impossible. Guilt tricks you into thinking that punishment is the same as responsibility. It is not. Punishment is passive. You sit there and take it. You let the bad feelings wash over you. You endure. Responsibility requires movement. It requires you to stand up. It requires you to say, I messed up, and I cannot change that, but I can change who I am today. The myth of suffering as payment is actually a form of avoidance. As long as you are busy punishing yourself, you do not have to do the hard work of actual growth. As long as you are the villain in your own story, you do not have to become the hero of a new one. This creates a split in your identity. You become two people. You are the prisoner and you are the warden. The warden is strict. The warden watches your every move. If you find yourself laughing at a joke, the warden steps in. He reminds you of what you did. He whispers that you have no right to laugh. Not after what happened. Not after who you hurt. So you suppress the laugh. You kill the moment of joy. And the warden nods in approval. He marks it down in the ledger. Another payment made. You do this with your ambitions too. You might have a dream to start a business, or create art, or travel. But the warden reminds you that success is for people with clean slates. Success is for people who haven't made the mistakes you have made. So you stay small. You stay quiet. You keep your head down. You think this humility is virtuous. You think you are being respectful of the gravity of your errors. But look at the cost. By diminishing yourself, you are robbing the world of who you could be. You are robbing the people around you today of your full presence. Think about the people currently in your life. Your family, your partner, your colleagues, your community. They need you. They need your energy. They need your creativity. They need your love. But you are giving them a diluted version of yourself. You are giving them someone who is tired, someone who is distracted, someone who is constantly looking over their shoulder at the past. Your guilt is not just hurting you, it is stealing from them. The energy you spend maintaining this shrine of regret is energy you cannot spend on kindness today. The hours you spend in the courtroom of your mind are hours you are not present with the people who love you now. This is the paradox. You hold on to the guilt because you want to be a good person, but the guilt is preventing you from being the good person you want to be. You are so focused on the debt of yesterday that you are bankrupting today. We must dismantle the equation. We must break the link between suffering and redemption. You have to accept a radical idea. You are allowed to be happy even if you have made mistakes. You are allowed to succeed even if you have failed in the past. You are allowed to be loved even if you have hurt others. This sounds like heresy to the guilty mind. It sounds like letting yourself off the hook. It is not letting yourself off the hook. It is taking yourself off the rack. There is a difference between remembering a lesson and reliving a trauma. The lesson is portable. You put it in your pocket and you carry it with you. It informs your choices. It makes you wiser. It makes you gentler. It ensures you do not repeat the mistake. The trauma is a cage. It keeps you in the same place. It forces you to relive the crash without ever walking away from the wreckage. You have likely heard the saying that time heals all wounds. But for the person deep in the grip of guilt, time does not heal. Time calcifies. The guilt hardens. It becomes part of your posture. It becomes the expression on your face. This happens because you are actively maintaining the wound. You are picking at the scab because you are afraid that if it heals, you will forget. You are afraid that if the pain goes away, the significance of the event goes away. You think the pain is a monument to the mistake. You think that as long as you hurt, the memory is honoured, but honour is not found in pain. Honour is found in improvement. If you truly want to honour the past, you must build a better future. You cannot do that while you are chained to the floor. Let us go back to the idea of the transaction. You feel you owe a debt. Okay, let us accept that premise for a moment. Let us say you do owe a debt to the world for the mistakes you have made. How do you pay it? You do not pay it by suffering. The world does not need your misery. The world has enough misery. You pay it by adding value. You pay it by being kind. You pay it by being useful. You pay it by being a source of stability and joy for others. Every time you choose to smile, you are adding light to the room. Every time you forgive someone else, you are breaking a cycle of bitterness. Every time you use your experience to help someone avoid the same pitfall, you are turning your regret into a resource. This is true payment. This is active redemption. But you cannot do any of these things if you are exhausted from beating yourself up. You cannot lift anyone else up if you are busy holding yourself down. The myth of suffering as payment is a lie that keeps you weak. It is a defense mechanism that masquerades as morality. It is time to see it for what it is. It is a waste. You have punished yourself enough. The sentence has been served. The gavel came down a long time ago. You are the one who keeps walking back into the cell and closing the door. You are waiting for permission to leave. You are waiting for someone to come and tell you that the debt is cleared, but no one is coming. There is no external authority that will sign the release papers. There is no letter in the mail that will tell you it is okay to breathe again. The authority is you. The judge is you. The warden is you. You have to decide that the transaction is over. You have to decide that your suffering has lost its utility. You have to decide that the best way to make up for the past is to fully inhabit the present. This is not arrogance. It is not forgetting. It is the only way to move forward. The invisible weight you carry is not a requirement of your existence. It is a choice you make every morning. And it is a choice you make every night when you lie in the dark and wonder if you have suffered enough. The answer is yes, you have. Whatever you did, whatever you failed to do, whatever words you said or didn't say, the quota of pain has been met. The ledger is closed. The currency of misery is no longer accepted here. It is time to find a new way to live. A way that is not based on subtraction, but on addition. A way that does not look back in anger, but looks forward with purpose. This requires courage. It is actually scarier to let go of the guilt than to keep it. The guilt is familiar. It is a heavy coat, but it is warm. It gives you an identity. Without the guilt, who are you? You are just a human being who is flawed, a human being who has stumbled, a human being who is capable of great harm and great good. That is a vulnerable thing to be, but it is the only thing that is real. The myth that you can buy your way out of the past with pain is dissolving. You can see the cracks in the logic. You can feel the futility of it. You are starting to understand that the best apology you can offer the world is a changed life, not a broken one. So we leave the courtroom, we leave the cell, we step out of the shadow of the myth. We are ready to talk about what comes next. We are ready to talk about the mechanics of release, not because you have forgotten, but because you have remembered enough. You are ready to put down the stone, not because it isn't heavy, but because you have carried it far enough. Separating responsibility from rot. You have arrived at a difficult realization. You have walked through the archives of your regret. You have sat in the courtroom of your mind at 3 a.m. You have tried to pay your debts with the currency of suffering, and now you are standing here with a heavy truth. The debt is not paid. The weight has not lifted. The guilt is still there. This brings us to the most critical distinction in your journey toward release. It is the separation of responsibility from rot. These two things look similar from a distance. They both involve the past. They both involve an acknowledgement of error. They both involve a heaviness in the chest. But they are fundamentally different forces. One is a tool for building a better future. The other is a parasite that feeds on your potential until there is nothing left. To understand this, you must look at the nature of organic things. Imagine a piece of fruit that has fallen from a tree. When it first hits the ground, it is bruised. That is the initial impact of a mistake. It is real. It happened. The bruise is the signal that something has been damaged. But what happens next depends on the environment. If the fruit is picked up and the bruised part is cut away, the rest can be used. It can nourish. It can serve a purpose. But if that fruit is left in the tall grass where the sun cannot reach it, the process of decay begins. It softens. It turns largely into liquid. It draws flies. It smells sweet and sickly. It becomes part of the dirt. This is rot. Most people who carry chronic guilt are not practicing responsibility. They are practicing rot. They are lying in the tall grass of their own history, allowing the memory of their errors to decompose their character. They believe that by lying there and decomposing, they are doing something noble. They think the decomposition is the apology. They think the rot is the penance, but rot serves no one. It does not fix the window you broke. It does not heal the heart you wounded. It does not return the time you wasted. Rot is passive. It is a surrender to entropy. It is the decision to let a past version of yourself consume the present version of yourself. Responsibility is entirely different. Responsibility is solid. It is dry. It is often cold and hard to touch, but it does not smell of decay. Responsibility is a mechanic walking into a garage to look at a broken engine. The mechanic does not weep over the engine. He does not beat his chest and ask why he is such a terrible person for letting the engine break. He does not refuse to eat dinner because the car will not start. He assesses the damage. He acknowledges that the damage exists. He admits that perhaps his lack of maintenance caused the failure. And then he picks up a wrench. This is the shift you must make. You must put down the whip and pick up the wrench. The problem is that the whip feels easier. This is a strange thing to say because self-punishment hurts. But in a twisted way, the pain of self-punishment is comfortable. It is a known quantity. As long as you are whipping yourself, you do not have to change. As long as you are paralyzed by guilt, you do not have to risk failing again. The rot provides a hiding place. It whispers that you are too damaged to move forward, so you are excused from the terrifying work of living. Responsibility is terrifying because it requires action. It requires you to stand up. It demands that you look at the mess you made without flinching and without hating the person who made it. It asks you to say, "I did this, and I will ensure it does not happen again." Responsibility separates the action from the identity. Rot fuses them together. When you are in the rot, you say, "I am a mistake." When you are in responsibility, you say, "I made a mistake." The difference in language seems small, but the difference in outcome is the span of a lifetime. If you are a mistake, there is no hope for you. You are flawed at the atomic level. The only logical course of action is to hide, to shrink, and to apologize for your existence. This is what the invisible weight of guilt does. It convinces you that your very presence is an error. This is why you over-apologize. This is why you walk with your head down. This is why you sabotage your own happiness. You feel that a mistake does not deserve joy. But if you simply made a mistake, then you are a human being who is learning. The mistake is an event in time. It has a start time and an end time. It is an object that can be examined. It can be deconstructed. You can learn why you did it. You can understand the fear or the selfishness, or the ignorance that drove the action. You can fix those underlying causes. Rot does not want you to understand. Rot wants you to suffer. We must go deeper into this because the confusion is deep. You have been taught that guilt is a sign of a good conscience. You think that if you stop feeling guilty, you will become a monster. You fear that without this heavy weight keeping you down, you will hurt people again. You use your guilt as a leash. This is a lie. Guilt is an alarm system. Think about a fire alarm in your house. When there is smoke, the alarm screams. It is loud. It is piercing. It is designed to be impossible to ignore. This is healthy guilt. It wakes you up. It tells you there is a danger. It tells you that you have crossed a line or violated a value. But imagine if the fire was put out 10 years ago. Imagine the house is safe, but the alarm is still screaming. It has been screaming for a decade. It screams while you eat. It screams while you sleep. It screams while you try to talk to your children. Is that alarm helping you? Is it making you safer? Or is it just destroying your hearing and driving you to madness? Chronic guilt is a broken alarm. It is not keeping you moral. It is keeping you distracted. It drains the energy you need to be a good person today. It makes you self-absorbed. This is the great irony of guilt. We think guilt is about others, but toxic guilt is entirely about the self. When you are drowning in the rot of your own regret, you are not thinking about the people you love. You are thinking about how bad you feel. You are thinking about your shame. You are thinking about your failure. You are the center of the universe in your own tragedy. Responsibility breaks this cycle because responsibility turns your eyes outward. It asks, what does the world need from me right now? It acknowledges that the past is a locked room. You cannot enter it. You cannot move the furniture. You can scream at the walls of the past until your voice is gone and not 1 second will change. Responsibility accepts the permanence of the past so that it can claim the malleability of the future. You must begin the process of excavation. You have to go into that dark room in your mind where you keep your guilt, and you have to sort through it. You have to pick up each heavy stone and ask a question. Is this responsibility or is this rot? If it is responsibility, there is a verb attached to it. There is an action. Is there an apology that needs to be sent? Send it. Is there a debt that needs to be paid? Pay it. Is there a behavior that needs to change? Change it. If there is an action you can take, do it. That is the weight of the brick used to build the house. It is heavy, but it serves a purpose. But if you pick up the stone and there is no action attached to it, then it is rot. If the person is gone and cannot hear your apology. If the situation is over and cannot be revisited. If the only thing left to do is feel bad, then you are holding on to decay. You are holding it because you think the pain is a tribute to what you lost. You think that if you let go of the pain, you are disrespecting the memory. You think that your suffering is a way of keeping the past alive. It is not. Your suffering is just suffering. It adds no value to the universe. It brings no peace to the victims of your mistakes. It brings no clarity to your mind. It is wasted energy. This is the hardest part to accept. We want our pain to mean something. We want to believe that our sleepless nights are a form of work. We want to believe that by destroying our own peace, we are balancing the scales of justice. But the universe does not work on a barter system of pain. You cannot trade your misery for redemption. Redemption is not bought. It is built. It is built through changed behavior. It is built through compassion. It is built by becoming the person who would not make that mistake again. And you cannot become that person while you are rotting. Rot makes you weak. It makes you brittle. A person consumed by guilt is defensive. They are easily triggered. They hide from the truth because the truth hurts too much. To be truly good, you need your strength. You need your clarity. You need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and see a person who is capable of both great error and great good. You have to forgive the person you were when you made those mistakes. This does not mean you excuse the behavior. It means you recognize that the person you were back then did not have the wisdom you have now. In fact, you only have that wisdom because of the mistake. The error was the lesson. If you refuse to learn the lesson because you are too busy beating yourself up, you have wasted the suffering. Don't waste the suffering. Harvest it. Take the knowledge you gained from your darkest moments and use it to navigate the light. If you were cruel, be kind now. If you were careless, be deliberate now. If you were dishonest, be truthful now. That is how you honor the past. You honor it by letting it change you for the better, not for the worse. Separating responsibility from rot requires a sharp knife. It requires you to cut the cord between who you were and who you are. It requires you to say that happened, and it was bad, but I am here and I am alive. You will feel a resistance when you try to do this. Your mind will tell you that you are letting yourself off the hook too easily. It will tell you that you deserve to feel bad forever. When that voice speaks, recognize it for what it is. It is not the voice of justice. It is the voice of fear. It is the voice that prefers the safety of the prison cell to the uncertainty of the open road. You have served your time. You have sat in the darkness long enough. The lesson has been delivered. The archive is full. There is nothing more to be gained by staring at the wreckage. Responsibility is calling you. It is calling you to stand up. It is calling you to wash the rot from your skin. It is calling you to walk out of the courtroom and into the sunlight. The weight you feel is not the weight of what you did. It is the weight of your refusal to let it go. It is the weight of dead things that you are carrying on your back. You can put them down. You can leave them on the side of the road. You can walk away. This is not forgetting. You will never forget. The scar will always be there on the fruit. But a scar is not a wound. A wound is open and bleeding. A scar is sealed and strong. A scar says, I survived this and I learned from it. Let the wound become a scar. Let the rot become compost. Let the guilt become growth. You are not what you did. You are what you do next. The silence of the night is not your judge. It is just silence. It is waiting for you to fill it with something other than regret. It is waiting for you to fill it with the steady rhythm of a person who has accepted their humanity. We are almost at the end of this journey. You have separated the useful from the useless. You have identified the difference between the work of repair and the waste of decay. Now we must take the final step. We must look at how to finally release the grip. Not just intellectually, but emotionally. We must learn how to exhale the breath you have been holding for years. But for this moment, just sit with the distinction. Feel the difference in your body. Rot is heavy and dark. Responsibility is light and clear. Which one do you want to carry tomorrow? Which one belongs to the person you are trying to become? The choice is yours. It has always been yours. The invisible weight is only as heavy as your grip upon it. Open your hands. Let the rot fall. Keep the lesson. You are ready for the final release. You are ready to forgive. Not because you are perfect, but because you are done with the punishment. The sentence is over. The cell door is open. All you have to do is walk through. The art of self-forgiveness. We have arrived at the final threshold. You have walked through the archives of your regret. You have sat in the courtroom at 3 a.m. You have felt the weight of the backpack you have been carrying for years. You understand now that guilt is not a permanent state of being, but a signal that got stuck. You understand that your suffering is not a form of payment. Now comes the hardest part. It is harder than understanding the psychology. It is harder than analysing your past. It is the act of actually letting go. This brings us to the art of self-forgiveness. I call it an art because it is not a science. It is not a switch you flip. You cannot force it with logic alone. You cannot demand it from yourself. It is a practice. It is a skill you must learn slowly. It is something you must cultivate with patience and a tremendous amount of courage. Most people misunderstand what it means to forgive themselves. They think it means letting themselves off the hook. They think it means forgetting what happened. They worry that if they forgive themselves, they are saying that the mistake did not matter. They fear that forgiveness is a form of betrayal against the person they hurt, or the standard they failed to meet. Let us clear the air right now. Self-forgiveness is not amnesia. It does not mean you forget the lesson. It does not mean you condone the behavior. It does not mean you are arrogant or careless. Self-forgiveness is simply the decision to stop punishing yourself for a sentence that has already been served. It is the recognition that your guilt has finished its job. It alerted you. It corrected you. It changed you. Keeping it now does not make you a better person. It only makes you a tired one. To begin this art, you must first confront the identity you have built around your guilt. For many of us, guilt becomes a comfortable coat. It is heavy and it scratches the skin, but it is familiar. We wear it because we think it keeps us safe. We think that if we feel bad enough about the past, we will be protected from making mistakes in the future. We think that if we punish ourselves, we are balancing the scales of the universe. But there are no scales. There is only cause and effect. There is only action and reaction. Your internal misery does not add value to the world outside. It does not help the people you love. It does not undo the words you said. It does not rebuild the bridges you burned. All your self-punishment does is drain the energy you need to do better today. So the first stroke in the art of self-forgiveness is to surrender the magical thinking that says your pain has utility. You must admit that your suffering is useless. This is a terrifying admission. It means that all those nights you spent awake and hurting were not noble sacrifices. They were just lost sleep. Once you accept that the pain is optional, you are left with a choice. You can keep carrying it, or you can put it down. But how do you put it down? You do it by separating your actions from your worth. This is the distinction between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt is a focus on behavior. Shame is a focus on self. Self-forgiveness requires you to look at the mistake and say, I did that. I am the one who made that choice. I am the one who failed. And at the same time, you must say I am more than that single moment. I am a complex human being capable of growth and capable of repair. You must look at the version of yourself who made the mistake with clarity. Think back to who you were when the guilt began. Maybe you were younger. Maybe you were afraid. Maybe you were acting out of a trauma you did not yet understand. Maybe you were just tired and careless. This does not excuse the act, but it explains it. You are not that person anymore. The very fact that you feel guilt proves that you have outgrown that version of yourself. The person who made the mistake did not see what you see now. If they had the wisdom you possess today, they would have acted differently. So why are you punishing the person you are today for the ignorance of the person you were yesterday? It is like being angry at a child for not knowing how to solve a calculus equation. You were doing the best you could with the tools you had at the time, even if your best was not good enough. Even if your tools were broken, you must extend a hand of compassion to that past self. You must treat them not as a criminal, but as a student who failed a test. You do not beat the student. You teach them. You show them where they went wrong. You ensure they understand the material so they do not fail again. And then you let them move on to the next grade. This brings us to the concept of repair. True self-forgiveness is active. It is not sitting in a room thinking happy thoughts. It is engaging with the world. If you can make amends, then you must make them. If you can apologize, then you must speak the words. If you can fix what was broken, then you must pick up the glue. But often we cannot fix it. The person is gone. The relationship is over. The time has passed. The door is shut. In these cases, the repair must be internal. You must dedicate your life to living the lesson you learned. If your guilt comes from neglecting your health, then your apology is to treat your body with respect today. If your guilt comes from harsh words spoken in anger, then your apology is to speak with kindness to the people currently in your life. If your guilt comes from wasted time, then your apology is to seize the present moment with focus and gratitude. You honor the mistake by ensuring it was not in vain. You turn the regret into fuel for a better life. This is the only true apology. This is the only way to balance the equation. You do not balance it with pain. You balance it with growth. There is a specific feeling that comes when you are close to forgiving yourself. It feels like fear. You will feel a resistance in your chest. A voice will whisper that you do not deserve to feel light. It will tell you that if you let go of the guilt, you will forget the gravity of what you did. It will tell you that you are letting yourself off too easy. This is the final trap. This is the ego trying to maintain control. The ego loves guilt because guilt is dramatic. Guilt makes you the main character of a tragedy. Forgiveness is quiet. Forgiveness is humble. Forgiveness is ordinary. To forgive yourself is to admit that you are just a human being. It is to admit that you are fallible. It is to step off the pedestal of perfection and join the rest of us in the messy and beautiful reality of life. You must be willing to be ordinary. You must be willing to be a person who makes mistakes and learns from them. When that voice of resistance rises, you must answer it with firmness. You must say, I have learned. I have changed. I have paid enough. Imagine for a moment that you are holding a heavy stone in your hand. You have held it so long that your fingers are cramped. Your muscles are trembling. You have held it so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to have an open hand. Self-forgiveness is the slow uncurling of the fingers. It hurts at first. The muscles are stiff. The habit of gripping is strong. You might drop the stone and then panic and pick it back up again. That is okay. You just put it down again. You practice the release. You visualize the cord that ties you to the past. You see it clearly. It is thick and grey. It is wrapped around your waist. You take a pair of scissors in your mind. You do not cut the past away. You cannot cut the past, but you can cut the cord that feeds your energy into it. Snip. You watch the thread fall away. You feel the sudden shift in your center of gravity. You are no longer being pulled backward. You are standing on your own 2 feet. You are facing forward. The memory is still there. It sits in a frame on the wall of your mind. But it is just a picture now. It is not a monster. It cannot hurt you. It cannot shout at you. It is just a record of something that happened. You can look at it without flinching. You can nod at it with respect for the lesson it taught you. And then you can turn away and walk out of the room. This is the freedom you have been denying yourself. It is a quiet freedom. It does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives with a deep breath. It arrives with the realization that the sun is shining and you are allowed to feel its warmth on your face. You are allowed to laugh again. You are allowed to start a new project. You are allowed to love someone new. You are allowed to be happy. Happiness is not a betrayal of your past. It is the purpose of your future. As you move forward from this moment, try to catch yourself when the old patterns return. When you make a small mistake and the gavel comes down in your mind, catch it. Stop the trial before it begins. Remind yourself that you are learning. Remind yourself that perfection is a myth. Remind yourself that the goal is not to never fall, but to get back up quicker. You have spent enough time in the shadows. You have analysed the darkness enough. You know the texture of the floor in that courtroom better than anyone. It is time to open the heavy doors. It is time to step out into the street. The air is fresh out here. The noise of the world is waiting for you. There is work to be done. There is joy to be found. You do not need to carry the backpack anymore. You can leave it on the steps. No one will steal it. No one wants your guilt. It was only ever valuable to you and its value has run out. Leave it there. Straighten your back. Feel the space in your chest where the tightness used to be. Fill that space with breath. You are forgiven not because a divine power said so and not because the people you hurt said so. You are forgiven because you have decided to stop fighting your own humanity. You have decided to be on your own team. Walk forward now. Do not look back. The past is a library where you learned a hard lesson. It is not a home where you live. Walk forward. You are lighter now. You are free. Unclenching the fist. Think about the muscles in your hand. Think about the energy required to keep your fingers curled tight against your palm. It takes effort to make a fist. It takes a constant active supply of tension to keep it closed. If you were to hold that fist for an hour, your forearm would burn. If you held it for a day, your hand would cramp and lose its function. If you held it for a year, you might forget how to open it at all. We tend to view guilt as something that happens to us. We see it as a storm that descends or a weight that falls upon our shoulders. But in reality, guilt is often a muscular action of the soul. It is a grip. It is a fist we clenched long ago in a moment of fear or regret, and simply never unclenched. We hold on to the memory. We hold on to the pain. We hold on to the narrative that says we are fundamentally flawed because of what we did or what we failed to do. This brings us to the final and most difficult phase of understanding this silent weight. We have looked at how guilt enters. We have examined how it accumulates. We have walked through the courtroom that sits in the back of your mind at 3 a.m. Now we must discuss the act of letting go. We must talk about unclenching the fist. You might feel an immediate resistance to that phrase. When people hear the words let go or forgive yourself, they often recoil. It feels dangerous. It feels irresponsible. Deep down, many of us believe that our guilt is the only thing keeping us moral. We fear that if we stop feeling bad about the past, we will become monsters who do not care about right and wrong. We believe the pain is a form of payment. We think that if we suffer enough, we balance the scales. But you have already learned that suffering is not a currency. No amount of self-hatred buys back a single second of the past. The fist you are making does not help the people you hurt. It does not undo the mistake. It only renders your own hand useless for the present moment. You cannot build anything new with a clenched fist. You cannot offer help with a clenched fist. You cannot accept kindness with a clenched fist. The process of unclenching starts with a realization that is both simple and terrifying. You are not holding on to guilt because you have to. You are holding onto it because it feels safer than moving on. Guilt provides a perverse sense of control. As long as you are beating yourself up, you are still engaged with the past. You are still in the relationship that ended. You are still at the job you lost. You are still in the room where the mistake happened. To let go of the guilt is to admit that the past is truly dead. It is to admit that you are powerless to change it. That kind of powerlessness is frightening. It leaves you exposed to the present. So we stay in the prison of our own making, because we know where the walls are. We know the routine. The punishment feels familiar, and familiarity feels like safety. Unclenching the fist requires you to challenge the story you have told yourself about your own character. Guilt often whispers that you are your mistake. It merges your identity with your history. You stop being a person who told a lie, and you become a liar. You stop being a person who failed, and you become a failure. This solidification is heavy. It is a suit of armor that crushes you. To release this weight, you must introduce a wedge between who you were then and who you are now. You must recognize that the person who made that mistake had a different level of awareness. They had different coping mechanisms. They were operating under stress or ignorance or fear that you may no longer possess. This is not an excuse, it is context. You can take full responsibility for the actions of that past version of yourself without condemning the present version of yourself to a life sentence. Think of it like a scar. When you cut your skin, the body rushes to heal the wound. It hurts, it is sensitive, but eventually the wound closes. The skin knits together. A mark remains. The scar is not the wound. The scar is the evidence of healing. Toxic guilt is a refusal to let the wound become a scar. It is the compulsion to pick at the scab every single day to ensure it still bleeds. You do this because you think the blood proves you are sorry, but the blood only proves you are injured. Unclenching the fist means letting the scab form. It means allowing the scar to settle. It means looking at the mark on your skin and saying, I remember how this happened, and I will ensure it does not happen again, but I will no longer bleed for it. This transition is physical as much as it is psychological. You might notice that when you are deep in a guilt spiral, your body collapses. Your shoulders roll forward. Your chest caves in. You avoid eye contact even when you are alone. You make yourself small. You are trying to hide from the judge in your mind. Try to observe this when it happens. Catch yourself in the middle of the spiral. Notice the tension in your jaw. Notice the shallow rhythm of your breathing. When you catch it, do not fight it. Do not yell at yourself for feeling guilty. That only adds more noise. Instead, just soften. Take a breath that fills your stomach. Drop your shoulders. Open your hands. Place them flat on the table or on your lap. Physically unclench. Tell yourself quietly that you are safe in this moment. The past is not here. The people you disappointed are not here in this room. It is just you and your breath. By changing your physical state, you send a signal to your brain that the emergency is over. The alarm bell we discussed earlier can finally stop ringing. There is a grief in letting go of guilt. This is something few people talk about. We grow attached to our suffering. It becomes a companion. If you have spent 10 years feeling bad about something, that feeling has become a major part of your biography. Who are you without this weight? If you put down the heavy bag you have been carrying for miles, you might feel lightheaded. You might feel unbalanced. You might wonder what you are supposed to do with your arms now that they are free. This is the void that follows forgiveness. It is a spaciousness that can feel empty at first. But this space is where your life begins again. This is where you get to decide who you want to be, not in reaction to a past mistake, but in anticipation of a future possibility. You must understand that forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is a practice. You do not wake up one morning and find that the guilt has vanished forever. It is more like the weather. Some days will be clear. Some days the clouds will gather again, and you will feel the familiar urge to make the fist. You will remember the awkward thing you said, or the person you let down, and the muscles will tighten. That is okay. It is not a failure. It is just a memory. When that happens, you simply notice it. You acknowledge the regret. You respect the lesson it taught you. And then you gently unclench the hand again. You do it 1,000 times if necessary. Each time you let go, the grip becomes a little weaker. Each time the return to peace becomes a little faster. We often confuse self-forgiveness with weakness. We think the strong person carries their burden to the grave. But look at the people you admire. Look at the people who are kind and wise and effective. Do they seem weighed down? Do they seem paralyzed by shame? No. They have likely made mistakes just as large as yours. The difference is that they learned from them and then laid them down. They used the wreckage of their past to build a foundation for their character. They did not set up camp in the ruins. The energy you are currently using to punish yourself is a finite resource. Every ounce of focus you direct toward playing out old arguments or reliving old failures is energy you are stealing from the people who need you today. Your guilt does not serve them. Your presence serves them. Your attention serves them. Your ability to love and work and listen serves them. You cannot do those things fully while you are wrestling with a ghost. To unclench the fist is an act of generosity. You are giving yourself back to the world. You are deciding that you are more useful as a whole person than as a broken one. There is a concept called the sunk cost fallacy. In economics, it means continuing to invest in a losing project just because you have already spent so much on it. We do this with our emotions. We think I have already spent 5 years feeling guilty about this, so I cannot stop now. If I stop now, those 5 years were wasted. But they are gone regardless. You cannot get them back. The only question that matters is what you will do with the next 5 minutes. Will you spend them tightening the grip? Or will you spend them with open hands? Imagine what it would feel like to put the heavy bag down. Visualize it. You are standing on a road. You are carrying a suitcase filled with every regret and every awkward moment and every failure. Your fingers are white from the strain. Your back is aching. Now imagine you just stop walking. You set the case down on the asphalt. You stand up straight. You roll your shoulders back. You take a deep breath of fresh air. You look at the suitcase. You know exactly what is inside it. You are not denying it exists. You simply do not need to carry it anymore. You turn and walk away. You leave it there on the side of the road. As you walk away, you feel lighter. You notice the sky. You notice the wind. You notice that your hands are free to swing by your sides. You are walking towards something new. This is not a fantasy. This is a choice you can make. It is a choice you make with your mind and with your body. The invisible weight of guilt is only as heavy as your grip makes it. You have the power to stop the accumulation. You have the power to silence the courtroom. You have the power to open your hand. It is time to forgive yourself. Not because you are innocent, but because you are human. Not because the past didn't happen, but because the future is waiting. The fist has been closed long enough. The muscles are tired. The lesson has been learned. Unclench. Let the blood flow back into your fingers. Let the tension drain out of your arms. Let the silence of the night be a comfort, not an accusation. You are allowed to move on. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to let go. The weight is gone. Breathe and begin. Walking lightly. We have reached the final turn in the road. You have identified the silent passenger. You have acknowledged the weight you carry. You have stood in the courtroom of your mind at 3 a.m. and heard the accusations. You have realized that suffering is not a currency and that you cannot pay for the past by destroying your future. Now we arrive at the most difficult part of the journey. It is difficult not because it is painful, but because it is unfamiliar. We arrive at the concept of walking lightly. To walk lightly is to move through the world without the constant gravitational pull of shame. It is a state of being that many of us have forgotten. We have become so accustomed to the resistance, so used to the heavy backpack of regret, that standing up straight feels dangerous. When you finally unclench the fist and drop the weight, the first sensation is often not relief. It is vertigo. You feel unbalanced. You might even feel exposed. There is a strange comfort in guilt. It is a heavy blanket. It suffocates us, yes, but it also hides us. As long as we are feeling guilty, we feel we are doing something about our mistakes. We tell ourselves that this pain is our penance. So when the moment comes to let it go, a voice inside you whispers a warning. It asks, "Who are you without this burden?" It suggests that if you stop suffering, you are betraying your conscience. It tells you that walking lightly means you do not care. This is the final trap. It is the last defense mechanism of the old pattern. We must dismantle it carefully. Walking lightly does not mean you have developed amnesia. It does not mean you have erased the past, or that you deny the reality of what happened. It simply means you have shifted your relationship to those memories. Think of a book you have read many times. You know the story. You know the tragedy in the middle chapters. But you do not need to carry the book in your hands every moment of every day to know what is written inside it. You can place it on the shelf. You can walk out of the room. The story remains part of your library, but it no longer occupies your hands. You are free to pick up new things. This is the distinction between carrying a lesson and carrying a sentence. A lesson is something you incorporate into your character. It becomes part of your structure, making you stronger and wiser. It is integrated. A sentence is something you endure. It keeps you stuck in a cell, pacing back and forth, unable to contribute to the world outside. When you decide to walk lightly, you're making a decision to be useful again. Heavy people, weighed down by the invisible anchor of shame, are exhausted. They are constantly looking inward, monitoring their own pain, checking their own worthiness. They have very little energy left for the people around them. They are so busy apologizing for their existence that they cannot actually participate in existence. By releasing this weight, you are not letting yourself off the hook. You are actually clearing the space to do good. You are freeing up the energy that was previously consumed by self-hatred. Now, that energy can be turned outward. It can be used to listen to a friend. It can be used to do your work with focus. It can be used to be present with your family. This is the ultimate reframing. Self-forgiveness is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of service to everyone who needs you to be whole. But how does this feel in the body? We must talk about the physical reality of walking lightly, because guilt is a physical sensation. It lives in the tightness of the shoulders. It lives in the shallow breath. It lives in the stomach. As you begin to practice this release, you must pay attention to your physiology. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a vast open field. The air is cool. The sun is rising. For years, You have been hiking up a steep mountain with a pack full of stones. Each stone has a name. Some are mistakes you made. Some are words you failed to say. Some are the expectations of others that you adopted as your own. You have reached the plateau. You are allowed to take the pack off. Visualize the straps sliding off your shoulders. Hear the sound of the pack hitting the ground. It creates a thud, and then there is silence. Stand up, roll your shoulders back. Take a deep breath that goes all the way to the bottom of your lungs. This is what it feels like to reclaim your own biology. Your heart does not need to race anymore. Your stomach does not need to be in knots. You are safe here. As you walk away from that pile of stones, you might feel the urge to look back. You might feel the phantom weight on your back, ghost sensations of a burden that is no longer there. This is normal. The mind takes time to adjust to freedom. When those thoughts return, when the courtroom tries to reconvene in your head, you must be gentle but firm. You acknowledge the thought. You say to it, "I hear you, but we are done with that trial. The verdict is in. I have learned, I have changed, and now I am moving on." There is a quiet dignity in this transition. It is the dignity of a person who accepts their humanity. To be human is to be imperfect. It is to be a creature that learns through trial and error. If you demand perfection from yourself, you are demanding to be something other than human. You are trying to be a statue, flawless and frozen. But statues do not breathe. Statues do not love. Statues do not grow. Walking lightly means accepting the messiness of your own history. It means looking at your scars and seeing them as proof of survival, not proof of failure. A scar is a place where the skin has become stronger than it was before. It is a seal over the wound. If you keep picking at it, if you keep reopening it with guilt, it never becomes a scar. It stays a wound. It stays an open source of pain. Let it heal. Let it become silver and tough. Let it be a map of where you have been, but do not let it dictate where you are going. This new way of being changes how you interact with the future. When you are driven by guilt, you make decisions out of fear. You say yes to things you do not want to do because you feel you owe a debt. You stay in relationships that drain you because you feel you do not deserve better. You sabotage your own success because you are waiting for the other shoe to drop. When you walk lightly, those distortions vanish. You begin to make choices based on clarity. You help others because you want to, not because you are trying to buy your way out of purgatory. You pursue your goals because you enjoy the process, not because you are trying to prove your worth. The desperation leaves your eyes. People notice this change. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it. You become a steady presence. You become someone who is safe to be around because you are no longer at war with yourself. The nights become different too. The silence of the bedroom ceases to be an interrogation room. When you lay your head down, you are simply resting. Oh, you are not reviewing the tapes of the last 10 years. You are not flinching at the memory of a conversation from a decade ago. You allow the day to be done. You understand that sleep is a biological necessity, not a reward you have to earn. You close your eyes and the darkness is just darkness, soft, quiet, peaceful. This shift does not happen overnight. It is a practice. There will be days when the weight returns. There will be moments when you stumble and the old shame flares up like a match in a dark room. That is okay. It does not mean you have failed. It just means you are remembering. In those moments, you simply pause. You recognize what is happening. You remind yourself that you have already set the heavy things down. You do not have to pick them up again. You can step over them. There is a profound humility in walking lightly. It requires you to admit that you cannot change the past. The ego wants to believe that if we just think about it hard enough, if we just feel bad enough, we can retroactively fix what is broken. Giving up guilt means admitting that we do not have that power. What is done is immutable. It is carved in stone. The only thing that is fluid, the only thing that is pliable, is the present moment. By shifting your focus to the present, you honor the potential of who you are right now. You stop being a curator of a museum of regrets, and you become the architect of your own life. You start building again. You lay new bricks. You plant new gardens. You create a life that reflects the person you have become, rather than the person you used to be. This is the ultimate form of accountability. True responsibility is not about feeling bad. It is about doing better. It is about action. A person who walks lightly can move faster. They can reach further. They can lift others up because their own hands are not full of their own baggage. So consider this your permission slip. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to laugh without looking over your shoulder. You are allowed to succeed without feeling like a fraud. You have served your time. The cage door is open. It has been open for a long time. You are just sitting in the corner, too afraid to look at the lock. Stand up, stretch your limbs. Step out of the shadow of the cage. The light is bright and it might hurt your eyes for a moment. That is natural. Let your eyes adjust. Look at the horizon. There is so much road ahead of you. There are people waiting to meet the person you are now. There is work to be done that only you can do. Walking lightly is a choice you make with every step. It is a rhythm you find. Left foot, right foot. Breath in, breath out. No heavy dragging sound behind you. Just the sound of your own progress. Just the feeling of the wind against your face. You are not the things you have done. You are the capacity to change. You are the capacity to learn. You are the consciousness that observes the mistake and decides to correct the course. That consciousness is weightless. It is pure potential. Take a moment now, in the quiet of this audio, to feel that lightness. Let it start in the center of your chest. Let it expand outward to your fingertips and your toes. Imagine the cords being cut. Imagine the anchors rusting away and dissolving into the sea. You are untethered. You are free to go. You are free to be. Walk lightly now. The world is waiting for you. The final exhale. This brings us to the final moment of release. You have spent years believing that carrying this weight was necessary. You thought the heaviness in your chest proved you were a good person who understood their mistakes. But you now see the truth. Guilt is a teacher and not a jailer. Once the lesson is learned, the teacher must leave the room. Imagine that heavy coat slipping off your shoulders right now. It hits the floor with a thud. You are not forgetting the past or erasing history. You are simply choosing to stop dragging it behind you. Take a deep breath in. Hold it for a moment. Now let it out slowly. That is the feeling of forgiveness. It is quiet and it is light. You have paid enough and you have grieved enough. The sentence is served. Step forward into your life with open hands and a lighter step. The past is a reference point and not a residence. You are finally free to go.